Hello and welcome to Bosch Technology Talks. Thank you for joining us. My name is Ann Insero and I'll be the moderator for this webinar. Today, Jim Kasparek, Regional Marketing Manager North America for Fixed Cameras, will be presenting on Bosch's new IP3000i portfolio of cameras. Before I turn it over to Jim, I'll go through a few logistics. All audience lines have been muted to ensure quality audio, and we're recording this webinar and we'll post it online to our webinar registration page for viewing later. We'll also provide a link to download an attendance certificate at the end of the webinar. We'll take questions today via Slido. To use Slido, open a browser on your computer or mobile phone and type sli.do in the address bar and hit enter. You should see the screen pictured on the left. Enter the event code K591 to see the screen pictured on the right. Type your question in the box and hit ask. You can ask your questions anonymously or enter your name. By entering your name, we'll be able to respond to you personally if we do not have time to address all questions. You can ask your questions at any time throughout the presentation and we'll answer them at the end during our Q&A portion. With that, I'll turn it over to Jim to begin our presentation.
Thank you, Ann, and thank you everybody for attending. What we want to talk about today is going to be the introduction of a new 3000i series of cameras. This is something that Bosch introduced starting in October of last year, and it's actually a new portfolio or a new range of cameras meant to really be in the cost-effective portfolio, but bringing some technology into a camera range that we haven't had in the past. So it's a complete family from a microdome, a mini dome, a turret, and a bullet. Both the microdome and the turret currently they are indoor versions. The mini dome and the bullet, those are outdoor, IP66 rated. They all are 2 megapixel or 5 megapixel variants with frame rates up to 30 frames per second. The mini dome, and the bullet and the turret have IR up to 30 meters of IR, and also with the Bosch data security, and we'll get into a little bit later is our EVA. So for the mini or the microdome, it's the smallest form factor we have, and it's actually a very small form factor. It's an indoor model. It's IK8, offers 1080p up and 5 megapixel with 120 dB for a wide dynamic range. You have a flexible field of view, comes in a 2.3 or a 2.8 millimeter lens, so giving you up to 130 degree field of view, which is a very wide field of view. And also with built-in essential video analytics at the edge. The mini dome. The mini dome is IR equipped. It's both IK10 and IP66, both in a 1080p and a 5 megapixel. You'll see a lot of similarities between between these individual form factors. They all have a 1080p or a 5 megapixel, and the performance is identical because they're all using the same lenses and the same imagers. So you see a lot of similarities, just a change in form factor. The frame rate is up to 30 frames per second. The 5 megapixel variant is 20 frames per second. If you need to have 25 frames per second, a little bit higher, you have the ability to go down to a 4 megapixel variant, giving you up to 25 frames per second at 4 megapixels. The turret. So the turret is a new form factor for Bosch. It's not something we've delved into. It's a very popular form factor, but it gives kind of the flexibility of a mini dome as well as a bullet. So it gives you the same performance in just a different form factor. Again, this is the indoor model. It's an IK8, both up to 120 dB. You have your 30 frames per second at 1080p or up to 20 frames per second in your 5 megapixel, and a 15 meter for your IR and it is a fixed lens, so you're 2.3 to 2.8, giving you up to 130-degree field of view. And again, with built-in essential video analytics. The Bullet is a great form factor. It's a good replacement or a good DVR variant for, say, a fixed camera, a fixed box style camera, giving again your IK10, IP66, 1080p to 5 megapixel, up to 120 dB, your 30 frames per second, so very similar to the other 3 models that we talked about, just a different form factor. But this also comes with our built-in essential video analytics, and we'll be talking about that, a little bit more about that here in a second, because all of the 3000i series comes with our essential video analytics built in at the edge. Where does the 3000i, where does this family fit? When you look at what industries does this fit into, it really fits well into several, but some of the biggest ones that we see that it fits into is the retail. It's a great for standalone solutions from a cost-effective and from a footprint, a size point. It fits really good into your retail, your multi-stores, your large boxes in their warehouses. It gives a lot of benefit into the retail space with your advanced intrusion detection using our analytics, as well as people counting and a couple other things we'll actually cover. But then when you look at the rest of the commercial space, where else does it fit? It fits pretty much anywhere you can think. You're looking at your lending institution, your banks, commercial spaces, shopping malls, clinics, hospitals, your education, your K through 12, both indoor and outdoor capabilities. There's really nowhere that this camera or this family of cameras does not fit. So it's a great way to round out a complete solution for a project. So for a poll, just do all of the 3000i camera variants come with integrated essential video analytics? So let's go ahead and just take a poll right now. Okay, I guess everybody did hear that. So we have one no. So just to clarify, all of the 3000 series of cameras, which is a new family, it is our entry level, our cost-effective fighter, they all do come with our essential video analytics, again, which we'll cover here in a few seconds. So some of the differences we're going to talk about that separates the 3000i from several others in the field. We're going to talk about our essential video analytics, the image quality, the ease of installation, because there's been some things done at this level of product that makes it easier to install. We're going to talk about some intelligent bitrate management, which is H.265, our data security, and last but not least, our intrusion integration. So let's talk about essential video analytics. We all have heard about IVA. What is IVA? What does it do for me? And the so what? Basically, essential video analytics gives you eyeballs where you don't have eyes, because we know we can't be looking at these cameras all day long. If the facility has 30, 40, 100, 300, 2,000 cameras, they can't be looking at everything. So EVA, or video analytics, gives you eyeballs. You can set up rules and you can set up triggers to be able to alert an operator, or more importantly, send a text message, or there's several other things that can be done, but basically to bring attention to someone that a condition has changed that needs attention. And that's what video analytics is all about, as well as being able to give you forensic search capabilities. So after the fact, oh, I want to know what happened at this time and what crossed this line, or what spent more than 10 minutes in this specific area, and what red cars drove through the intersection. Those types of things can be done after the fact, and that's also the power of the essential video analytics. So what does video analytics provide? We'll call them triggers. Some people call them alarms. So the built-in part of this, so we can tell you when something is entered a field, left a field. If something that's just spending time inside of a field, line crossing, loitering, idle objects, if somebody left something behind, object removed. So if you want to sit there like in a museum or something and you want to make sure that something doesn't leave a space, you can use something like that, crowd detection. So if you want to say, hey, if there is a crowd of X number or large, we want to be alerted. So like in a school scene, you want to be able to create, if there's a fight occurring or if there's more people gathering up inside of it, like at a teller line or something. Route, are they going through the location through a safe, secure direction? They're not supposed to deviate on and off, say like a gangway, so that they're not supposed to go off of the gangway. So you can get the route counter. How many people are coming in and out? That's a big thing right now. I got stopped outside of a King Soopers here in Colorado, and they want to keep an accurate count of, they don't want to have more than 50% of the occupancy in the building, and they're using counters to do this. So this is applicable today. Occupancy, condition change, so slip and fall, similarity search, say I want to see something that looks like this, and or tampering. Has somebody moved the tampering of the camera? This also gives you the ability to then have some filters. Those filters are object classification. They're direction, so they have to be traveling in a certain direction. Size, an object of X size or smaller or larger. The aspect ratio of velocity. I want to know if cars are going through my parking lot in excess of X speed, and or color. I want to know how many people came into the building wearing yellow shirts. So these are all things that can be done at the edge to create alerts or alarms, or after the fact to be able to do a search on. You can run up to 8 of these simultaneously in the camera. So let's talk about the image quality. So all of the cameras are monochrome, so you have your black and white. They've got IR, we have IR, so you can get up to 0.03 lux for color reproduction. You have up to 120 dB across all of them, which is quite good, especially for storefronts or building entrances. Up to 30 frames per second on 1080p. If you take the 5 megapixel, it's 20 images per second. If you scale down to 4, you can have up to 25 frames per second. And again, both a 1080p and a 5 megapixel variant of each model. The outdoor versions, the Bullet and the Mini Dome, are IP66 and IK10. The Microdome and the Turret, they're both IK8. They all come with SD cards, so storage at the edge. So in the cameras with the firmware, one of the things that we implemented about a year ago in all of our cameras is the industrial protocol. So if you're using an industrial SD card, you will actually be able to capitalize on several different opportunities in the camera. So one of the biggest issues with using edge storage is you don't know if it's working. Did the card fail? Is it full? Is it overriding? All of these things. So using the industrial protocol with an industrial SD card, you'll be able to get alerts if the read-write speed changes, so if it decreases, if there's bad sectors, if the card fails, all of the things at the edge that would concern somebody like a hard drive and a laptop, all of that stuff is actually monitored with the protocol, and it's going to be able to alert you. So if we have bad sectors or if the read-write speed changes, you'd be able to get an alert and be able to address that before you have a complete failure. So what are some of the benefits of using the industrial protocol when using an industrial SD card? So let's go ahead and open up a poll for that so that we can, we've got, do we want to get a notification of the read-write speed? Do we get a notification of bad sectors on an SD card? Notification of storage card failures? And correct, you do have the ability to do all of those, which is one of the big things for edge storage, because a lot of the concerns is the card fails, we don't know about it until we need that video. But using an industrial SD card and the industrial protocol, All of this information is able to be notified to a VMS. We can actually even have the camera use an SNMP trap. And it can actually be, a message can be emailed or sent out, or to a notification can be pushed to recipients to be notified of that, giving them a much better notification. So ease of installation. There's been a couple things done with the 3000i at this level. There's been a couple things that's done to make installation a little bit easier. Usually when you get into the cost-effective camera family or microdomes and some of the others, you have pigtails. So in these form factors, all of them have had there's no pigtail on any of these, making it a little bit easier. You don't have to drill that big 1.5" or larger hole to squeeze the pigtail through on your ceilings or your walls or your surface that you're doing to it, giving it a little bit easier for cable management. The FlexiDome 3 is compatible with our modular accessories. So we have a modular family of accessories, universal accessories, and the mini dome mates up to that, the same as the rest of our cameras that we have right now, as well as the mini dome and the microdome are both 4S compatible. So you can put them on a 4S, a double gang, single gang, so they come with a mounting plate that makes them compatible, which is because the microdome is small enough to fit in a double gang or a 4S box, but it has the ability to mount on a 4S box and look like a single continuous unit. The other part of this on the microdome and the mini dome specifically, the cameras do have the ability to have an 85-degree angle of tilt. So basically the camera can see, if it's mounted on a wall, the camera can see below itself. However, if you go beyond 65 degrees, you do have the potential of running into some image obscuration. So you get a little blur in parts of the image. This is obviously going to depend upon what lens you're using and what your actual field of view is. But the camera itself has a tactile click, so that when you get to 65 degrees, it lets you know you're there. And if you go beyond that 65 degrees, you have the potential to have image obscuration, but it'll let the installer know as he's actually setting up the field of view, and minimizes your, having to go back and forth to get the right field of view or tilting too far. So data security. If you're familiar with Bosch, you may be familiar with Bosch's data security. Bosch goes through a lot for data security and for bitrate, so we'll cover the bitrate. I just totally missed that one. So all of the cameras come with H.264 and H.265. Utilizing H.265, you will have the ability to decrease your bandwidth and storage by up to 80%. Data security. So Bosch takes this very seriously. We actually have a group that handles data security for all electronic components from Bosch, from our automotive division to our medical division to our security, that audits all of the IP devices that Bosch provides. So there's a lot of focus that goes into data security, including being able to put a trusted platform module, basically an encrypted vault on the camera where everything is actually stored. So passwords, encryption, nothing's stored in a free space. Everything is stored in a TPM or basically an encrypted vault on the camera, to minimizing any kind of potential for hacking. It also prevents, with our signed firmware, there's no ability to upload third-party software. There's no ability to upload any kind of software. So when somebody wants to load a bot or anything else into our cameras, that potential is not there. Let's talk about intrusion integration. This is a big topic, especially when you're looking at a cost-effective video line and you're looking at intrusion, because intrusion is also very cost-effective. And what value do these two bring together? So when we're talking about intrusion integration, all of the Bosch cameras integrate with Bosch's IP alarm panels with up to 16 cameras. So this is both the B and the G series panels being able to integrate. And what does this mean? It means it's direct machine-to-machine connection. So the intrusion panels connected to the network, the cameras are connected to the network, and they talk to each other via the network. There's no what I would call relay magic. There's no I/O magic where you have to hook everything together to get it to work. And then what value does this actually bring? Well, you have the camera can talk to the panel as well as the panel can talk to the camera. So what can it do? So the panel can actually tell the camera to send a snapshot. And it can tell the camera to send a snapshot to X. It can do alarm verification. So an alarm occurs on the intrusion panel. The intrusion panel tells, again, that camera to send a snapshot of that alarm or in that area. Our alarm correlation could be arming or disarming. So when somebody disarms an area, you can have that camera take a snapshot and send it to somebody saying, hey, that's who disarmed the system or that's who armed the system. And schedule control. So one of the things that occurs in the video realm, there's a lot of schedule-based events. I want to change my recording rate at X time because that's when the facility is usually empty, and I want to change my frames per second, and I want to maximize my storage, but it's all a guess. If you say, hey, I want to change my frame rate and storage or my bandwidth at 5 p.m. because that's when I normally close the business, but there's people there till 7 p.m., you don't have the same auditability or the same quality video as you do as when the building is occupied. So one of the ways to do that is you can tell the camera to change its bit rate and everything based upon a given, and that given is when the intrusion panel arms up and when it disarms. When the intrusion's armed up, obviously there should be nobody in the area or there's going to be we're going to have a bigger problem. So when the area is empty, the intrusion system is armed, change my bit rate to X because we know it's a given. There's nobody here. When it disarms, there's somebody obviously here. We want the higher bit rate. And system condition, again, that's the arm and disarm, and the facility status, if it's armed, disarmed, etc. Now let's talk about the camera to the panel. This is a big deal. So all of those analytics that we talked about, line crossing, counting, object remove, object left, all of that can be used as a trigger, just like a motion detector or a door position switch. So we can say, hey, if there's a fire exit or an exit door that's blocked, the camera sees that, it tells the intrusion panel. And then the intrusion panel does what it's meant to do. It picks up the phone and calls somebody who cares, or it sends a text message to somebody who cares. So they can say, hey, that's not supposed to be blocked. Let me go ahead and take care of that right now, instead of waiting until Sparky comes around, or the fire marshal comes around and says, hey, I'm going to fine you because all of these carts are blocking your exit door. Item removed. Maybe we want to know if an item is removed. Look, think about in schools, think about in museums, retail. There are several different markets, or there's different verticals where they want to know if something has actually been removed. And it could actually be a dumpster. Believe it or not, there's dumpster thieves. So if the dumpster is missing, I want to know something. So then we let somebody know. Outdoor motion detection. There is no outdoor motion detection on an intrusion system is one of the most difficult things. We're using beams, we're using tri detectors, we're doing this, but they all get tripped up by the same things. But if you're using a camera, you can use one of those detectors and use a camera with the video analytics, and you have them work together to provide a better solution, minimizing your false alarms, improving the customer's experience and their headaches at getting the phone calls at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning because the dog jumped over the fence or because the wind blew the tree, something like that would set off a normal detector. Vehicle detection. Hey, at night, I want to know my loading dock. I don't want vehicles on my loading dock in the evening, and this will actually pick that up and say, hey, there's a vehicle parked where it shouldn't be. I'm going to tell somebody. And then system integrity. Being is the camera actually up and running and functional? If it's not, the intrusion panel can let somebody know. So you don't have to be watching the VMS. And why is this important? Because today we're always looking for a way to improve our sales. We're looking for that reason to get deeper into a customer. And one of the biggest reasons for the Intrusion integration is there are over 600,000 Bosch Intrusion systems that are compatible with the video that are installed today in the U.S. in the commercial space. That is a very compelling thing to say, you got an intrusion system, let me add value to this. And this is where the 3000i really brings a lot of value at a very effective price point. And with that being said, I want to thank you very much for joining the call today.
All right, thank you, Jim. Before we get to questions, a quick note that we're providing an attendance certificate for those interested, and I've pasted a link in the chat to download the certificate. And now we'll get to the questions. As a reminder, please submit your questions using Slido. To use Slido, open a browser on your computer or mobile phone and type sli.do in the address bar and hit enter. You'll see the screen pictured on the left. Enter the event code, which is K591, to see the screen on the right. Type your question in the box and hit ask. You can ask your questions anonymously or enter your name. By entering your name, we'll be able to respond to you personally if we don't have time to address all the questions. Our first question today is, are the micro and mini domes 4S compatible?
That's a good question. Yes, they are. Each one of them has an adapter plate. That's a 4S adapter plate. It's a separate part number, but it gives the ability to mount both the micro and the mini dome to a 4S, a double gang, and a single gang box, as well as providing the look and the feel of a continuous unit. So you wouldn't be able to look at the microdome and say, hey, that camera's actually fits inside of the 4S box. You wouldn't be able to see that. So you wouldn't actually be able to see the edges or anything of the back boxes.
Okay. Does the 3000i series integrate with all Bosch intrusion systems?
That's a loaded question because Bosch has had intrusion panels for quite some time. So the current B series, the 9512, as including the G series, the 9512, the 8512, as well as the B series, the 6512. So they will integrate with up to 16 depending on the model. So 4 to 16 cameras depending upon which panel they're using.
Okay. Are there detailed instructions on setting up video and alarm integration scenarios like what you discussed?
Yes, there are several different videos. We actually have them in our online university as well as on our YouTube channel. So there's several different avenues to get that information from. So either on our online university or through our YouTube channel, there's videos of being able to set that up.
Okay. What is a good place or application to use the turret camera?
That's, to me, the turret is it's a new form factor for me personally as well as Bosch, and it's a good form factor because it gives you a combination of, one, the simplicity of a dome, it gives you and the discreteness of a dome, but it gives you the flexibility and the ease of setup as a bullet and or a fixed box camera. So you don't have to worry about taking the dome on and off. You can actually unlock it. You can position for your field of view, and you can pretty much eyeball it much easier than you can with a dome. So I would see those are heavily used, maybe used in a lot of perimeter entrances. An indoor, anywhere you would want to have an expedited installation, and it comes down to preference as well. So there's a lot of, if you look in the market, there's a lot of preferences towards domes and towards a bullet. The fact that the bullet, or not the bullet, I'm sorry, the turret has a flat face, so you get less IR reflection. So wherever you would feel that we're on a mini dome, IR reflection or the halo you may see on a lot of domes may not be acceptable. That's where a turret may come in better.
Okay. Are the camera mounts compatible with other fixed cameras?
Yes. So for the microdome will have its own set of accessories that match up to our universal hardware. So that's going to happen this year. The mini dome, which was the big push, the mini dome is compatible with our universal mounting hardware. And so the plan is going forward for the last 2 years that all of our cameras will be compatible with a universal mounting setup.
Okay. Is the SD card built into the camera?
So, no, the SD card is not built into the camera. It's in the 3000 series, it's a micro SD card. It's not built into the camera, so you have the ability to, utilize an over-the-counter SD card, and you have the ability to use the cameras will support up to 1 terabyte. But be careful when you're utilizing and you're looking to utilize the industrial protocol, you would need to make sure that you're using actually an industrial SD card, not just a standard SD card. A standard SD card will not provide you the protection and the benefits of the industrial protocol.
Next question, are the older microdomes being replaced by the 3000 series microdome?
Yes, they are. So right now the 3000 is an indoor variant. There will be an outdoor or an IP66 IK10 variant of the microdome that will become available later this year, and those two, the 3000 microdomes, will replace the predecessors, the previously known as the 5000s.
All right, looks like we've got one last question. Can you explain the tilt click better and what is it for?
So in a dome, and all manufacturers have this problem, and if you look at in the industry, if you look at all of the manufacturers, they'll limit the tilt angle of the camera, and most of them will be anywhere between 62 to 66 degrees. The reason they do this is because the bubble itself, we think it looks like a real smooth single bubble, but in actuality it has a seam line. And that seam line is towards 65 degrees of tilt. Normally you won't ever run into this seam line because the camera will stop. Most manufacturers will stop so you don't get to that seam and don't get to that potential obscuration in the image, giving it like a blurred section, a real small section, but a small blurred section. So we've had several requests of being able to have, be able to have the cameras have an extreme angle of tilt. So there's a couple different ways to address that. One is you have a base plate that gives you a 4 degrees or a 10 degree or 12 degree tilt, so like a little wedge off the edge so the camera can look further down. With this camera, it has the ability to tilt down to 85 degrees. With that, you may see a slight blur in a section of the image, and that's intended, that's intentional. That's just the seam that's actually in the bubble. But however, if the field of view or the image or you're really looking for is not impacted by that, that's where we did that. If your image is like, we want to look at X, and that's the most important, and it's not impacted by that seam line, or it's acceptable to the customer, that just gives another extra benefit or value to be able to do that with less parts to get that image.
Okay, and we've actually had one more question come in. Can you explain IK08?
IK08, so if you're familiar with IK10, I'm going to get my joules mixed up, or impact. So IK10 is traditionally what is used in extreme conditions like in corrections or outdoors where it needs to be protected from serious impact. IK8 is, I think, 12 joules of impact resistance. So it's something where you would see, in a traditional commercial space where you believe that, it's high enough a customer can't get to it or somebody can't get to it. If they want to get to it, they need a ladder. So it's usually, an IK8 camera is usually removed a little bit outside of standard reach, where an IK10 camera is there because they know the potential for an impact or somebody to mess with it is highly probable. Either it's outside on a perimeter or it's low enough to where they think somebody can actually reach it with a hammer, ladder, or something else, or a bat to damage the camera.
Okay, that's all the time we have for today. We appreciate your attention and hope you'll tune in to our future webinars. Thank you for attending.